Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com, and in this video what I want to do is talk about React Remix. React Remix is basically a meta framework, so think of it as like in the same categories like Next.js, Gatsby, Blitz.js, whatnot, that is built on top of React. It's made for the same people who created React Router, and I just want to kind of show you a little bit. Like here I generated a new React into the Remix project. I haven't really written any code. I just want to kind of give you a tour so you can see what kind of like the setup is. So the cool thing about like React Remix is that when you create a Remix project, like when you run that like create script, you can choose your deployment target. So if you're deploying to like Netlify, Vercel, Cloudflare workers, they have a build that's going to have all the tools ready to go so that way you can deploy it to that target. So deployment, they got you, okay, which is nice. But I mean, you can see here like there's different services that configure certain things, and we're not going to get too deep into that. But this does show you the structure. So if you've ever used like Next.js or Gatsby, you're probably familiar with file-based routing, meaning like what the URL of the file is going to be based on where it exists in a particular folder. So in this case, we have this app folder, which is your entire application. And here, if you click on routes, this is where you would put your URL. So this index.jsx would be sort of your main page. Now, if you've used Next.js, you know like there's this function called like get server-side props that you could use to kind of prepare data on the server side, because that's the main reason you would want to use Remix or you would want to use Next.js, is because it allows you to do things on the server, not just client side like a pure React project. Okay, so essentially what you do is you would export this loader function, and anything that this function returns is data you can use. Okay, so you don't have to like, you just basically prepare your data here. You can make API calls in there, do whatever you need to get the data you want. And then so here's just a normal component, which would be your page. So again, basically each page is just a React component. And what you would do is you would use this use data loader hook. And then basically what this does is that this is going to load all the data that is generated by the loader function. So this loader function runs on the server, and then when your website loads up on the client side, you'll have all that data available. So this makes where you don't have to worry about like use effects when you're trying to make API calls. You can just have that data all prepared before the page ever loads, and it just loads with that data available. And you grab it using this hook. So that's pretty cool. Otherwise, you know, you have links to different places. It's nothing it's React, okay? But you can export different functions for different purposes. So for example, you can export a meta function in order to have metadata. You can export a link function if you want to like add like link tags. So you can export like things that you want to add to your head tag. So you can actually more influence what is inside your head tags for your pages on a page by page basis. You can kind of do this in Next.js using the helmet component. But it's the way they do it here. They do it as a function. Okay, so this way you can do more fancy stuff to get to the result that you need in case you need to do some dynamic stuff. Because again, the idea here is Remix is allowing you to server render pages. It has more of that sort of like old school, let's say PHP feel if you've done a lot of server side rendering in the past, or if you've used like Jinja with Python or something like that. Except you know it's no longer something that you're kind of usually you would do like templating, and then you have to like this separately do some jQuery for your JavaScript on the front end. Here it's a more cohesive experience. Okay, again, similar to Next.js, but there are some pretty, you know, big differences. And again, structure-wise is how some of this stuff is done, but also some of the features it has are very unique. Okay, so this is root.jsx. This is sort of like your root file. So this would be like, you know, the main HTML document. So you can go here, and this would like affect all sites. Okay, so it's kind of like this would be like your layout if you set up a layout in Next.js. So you can go in here and like set up, like if you want to set up like universal link tags or whatnot. I'm trying to see if they have an example of a link tag here. So this is what I'm talking about with the link function. So you can see here you can just export an array of different style sheets that you're exporting. Okay, here you see we're setting up the template. So it's like the layout, outlet. Okay, so all that's kind of there. You can use params. Now, in this case, if you wanted to use like a URL param, what you would do is you would use a $sign. Let me just see if they have an example. Like so, right here, see, you put a $sign in front of the name of that file. So that would mean that it's a param, and you just access the param through the loader function. So you can grab the param from the context that's passed to the loader function, because it just gets this one big object. So here we're destructuring params from that object, and then you can just pass it, do what you need to do with it, and if you want to, you can pass it in through the use load through the loader's return value to grab with the use loader function. So params are just as usable as before. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. Now actions, like this is probably like the most unique feature of Remix, where it wants you to use forms like the way HTML forms were designed to be used. So now when you create a form, so let me just find the form. So I'm sure there's a form, right here's the form. So you'd use it like a traditional form. So you see here, use this form component that's built into Remix, and it takes a method prop, kind of like forms take a method in HTML, and then that tells it, okay, hey, I'm going to post. Okay, I'm going to make a post request. And then what it does, when it makes that post request, it's actually going to make a post request to this action function that's being exported. So instead of you having to like do this whole thing where you go to your client side and you have to create like a handle submit function, and then that handle submit function makes, you have to kind of detail all the details there. Here, basically, you use the form the way you can just use a form as a form. You don't have to do all this like separate like JavaScript abstraction, and use forms the way they traditionally are used, and then define the response to that form. So basically, your post route would be this action function here, and then at the end, you can just redirect them to whatever page you want to redirect them to. So that's actually kind of nice. Okay, so basically, forms can theoretically be a lot easier to use, and that's again probably one of the cooler differences. That probably like it's where I'd say like it really becomes a kind of very unique among these different frameworks. Now, things it doesn't have like static site generation. This is primarily to build full stack server with sites with server side rendering. Although I think you could like just probably add some static HTML pages somewhere that get included, but not familiar enough with this yet to kind of say that. If you use Remix, please do make a comment. I would love to hear your thoughts on using Remix. But yeah, no, if you like Next.js, if you like Nux, SvelteKit, any of these kind of meta frameworks, this is a cool addition. Now, a little history on here, like your original model was to charge for Remix. So before they would charge you like a licensing fee to use Remix, and the idea is that like, hey, you know, they're going to maintain this and make sure this has like top of breed features. I'm assuming they've moved away from that because it is kind of hard to charge for frameworks when you have free options like Next.js. So I think they're going to kind of do sort of a similar approach to what Vercel does, where they offer a hosting platform, and basically their money is, hey, we're going to have this platform that is built to really optimize using this particular framework, and it's going to give you the best tools for using this framework, and we're going to keep building this framework to make your life easier. So Remix is, you know, in the game, and it's trying to like carve its place out. It's got some really cool tools and some really cool features and some really cool ideas. So it's worth giving it a try. So hopefully this gives you a little idea more of just kind of how it's laid out. But essentially, it's like, again, if you use Next.js, you know the deal. You create files. I think you can take advantage of React server components here, like you can in, yeah. So you can take care of some server side stuff here. I'm not too familiar with like React server components, which are now also in Next.js to speak to them in any kind of cohesive way. But there's a lot of cool stuff going on here. I really do like the form piece because it allows you to kind of like just use HTML more in an HTML kind of way, but still be in the React world, which I can appreciate. So yeah, that's a little preview of Remix. Go try it out. I will be posting a blog article soon on LogRocket's blog that's going to go more in detail. So do keep an eye out for that. You can always just go to my blog, toots.alexmercedcoder.com. At the very top, there's a link to all my posts on LogRocket. And there's some really cool posts there, so check them out. Have a great day and enjoy.